Business Security Weekly is live streamed and recorded on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Each week, we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communication to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners, they are celebrating the milestone of reaching over 1,000 members of the CISO community. The Cybersecurity Collaboration Forum is a one-stop shop for executive collaboration comprised of CISOs across various industries. If you want to be part of this growing community of CISOs, join them as a member or technology partner. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity collaboration. Larry, did you have another announcement?
Yeah, I did. And we even used to have a graphic for it.
We used to have stuff for it.
Yep. So 2 weeks ago, did a webcast, which you can go sign up and register for the recording. But of course, I don't remember the damn URLs because there's no graphic.
Where's that graphic? Hey, there it is.
Cool. On the 2023 State of Cybersecurity for Medical Devices with Finite State and Securin. Specifically, you can go register for that and get the recording at tinyurl.com/fs-meddev. And then next week, I will be speaking at the 7th Annual Auto ISAC Cybersecurity Summit, speaking about automotive software supply chain for enhancing case security and regulatory compliance in a connected era in Torrance, California. So
sweet.
Fun stuff. Yeah, I'll be at Auto ISAC event. So if you're there or in the area, stop by, and there's all sorts of fun evening events and that are allegedly open to all, whatever that means.
So not to digress, but just a quick blurb on CornCon, because Larry was mentioning ISAC. I met a couple people, and I didn't know that this thing existed, but there's apparently a mining ISAC.
Yeah.
That's based in Canada.
ISAC. Yep, ISAC. Yeah. Mining and metals or mining and materials ISAC. I actually spoke.
Yep. I was going to say, didn't you speak at that?
I spoke at their conference, one of my first weeks at Finite State. Yep, at Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, I met a couple of folks from there. In fact, the first speaker at before CornCon, there was a CISO summit, and I spoke there. First time speaking at a CISO summit. The first speaker was somebody from the ISAC. And they're a little bit frosty that the U.S. doesn't consider mining to be critical infrastructure, but it is in Canada, which is where they're from. So yeah, there were people there all the way from Calgary, way down in Davenport, Iowa, which is where CornCon was.
Nice. I saw like you and Win Schwartau. Actually, I saw a hilarious video. It was Win Schwartau and Jeff, and then in the background, like just doing Lintile, like doing like really, really funny thing. He just kept like walking with like, and then the one time he was carrying a box, like different stuff. I was dying laughing. You guys are hilarious.
Yep. Yeah, Win's been doing a Where's Win, video segment. His PR people put it together. I'm like, well, Win, when we're in Iowa, you have to do one, and I want to be a part of it. So that was the opportunity to do it. And then, of course, Lintile was doing what Lintile does. Lintile actually has a new game that I think he premiered it at GERCON, which was 2 weeks ago, but he also did it at CornCon. It's called, gosh, I'm not going to remember it. Come back to me on that. I'll think of it. Fun game.
It's a pretty cool game. Come back to me on that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, come back to me. Pass.
Well, Lintile is responsible for the tech behind Hacker Jeopardy. I know it wasn't always in Hacker Jeopardy.
He writes all the stuff.
And I didn't know he wrote it as well.
No, he writes all the.
Did we have him on the show to talk about that?
Hacker Charlatan.
Yeah, I think we had him on the show to talk. He might have been on the show.
We should. Or
we should have him back. Right, talk about the new game. Yeah, agreed. We've waited, I feel like a long time for this curl vulnerability to get the details on it. And we finally have the details on it. And it turns out that Lee Neely is here with us. Am I not? I don't see Lee. Where is Lee? Is Lee with us?
Oh, he's on program now.
He is. Hey, Lee.
Hey there.
What's up,
I'm
man?
here.
What's up, man?
Love the
I gotta,
shirt. Love the shirt.
I gotta put you on my screen. Where's Lee? Oh, I got that. Hey, there he is. What's up, Lee?
Hey, not much. Although I recently heard that it's pretty cold in Argentina. In fact, it's bordering on Chile.
I gotta use that in my meetings at work. So we got this CVE 2023-38545 SOX 5 heap buffer overflow in curl. It has to do with the curl opt buffer size option that you can overflow.
Yep.
Which is,
but only when you're using a
there was
SOX 5 proxy.
yes.
And either through some options with libcurl, with some proxy defined by environment variables, proxy defined by environment variables with curl binary, or using a couple of command line switches to define a SOX 5 proxy with the binary as well. And when it is past an overly long host name, greater than 255 bytes, it forces the app to go back to local resolution to the proxy instead, which gives it the ability to be overwritten in a longer string than the 255, so option for an overflow.
I mean, it was rated as severity of high.
Yes.
But I feel like what do we call that, probability or likelihood? Right? Like if you can exploit it, it's a high severity. But
Yes.
the number of situations in which you are able to exploit it, I feel like is pretty limited, right?
Yeah,
pretty
or
low.
likely low.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Would this also include the ability to demask anonymity socks and or things like C2 rats, in which you're overflowing that so that you can get back to a team server or callbacks?
Don't know.
It's in the SOX 5 host name or proxy or pre.
A lot of the C2s like Cobalt Strike has SOX 5 capability to pass that through and uses a lib library, so the curl library. So
it's probably libcurl. So
they stated that. What did they state in the thing? They said like, by the way, libcurl is used in a lot of different things.
Yeah. If this isn't a perfect, if this isn't a great case for a software bill of materials,
Right.
I don't know what is.
Libcurl is used by many applications, but not always advertised as such.
Yep.
That's pretty much supply chain vulnerabilities in a nutshell, right
yep,
there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
But it's interesting because we talked not that long ago, and in my story number 9, navigating the terrain of recent curl vulnerabilities, and the extended title. First, as part of the blog post, we navigated some of the recent ones in which Daniel, the curl author, shits all over NVD and CVE scoring because of one that was rated high because it allegedly keyed off a specific word, overflow, when in fact it was one that had already been really fixed, and it wasn't even a deal. It was like too large of an integer, which made your time funky or something like that. So he crapped all over those ratings. Yet on this one was like a big deal because he's like, hey, you should be using curl's data about the source of truth for whether this is rated high, medium, or low, or critical. Yet this one comes out CVE NVD rated as a high, and he's like, yep, that's a high. That was kind of weird. I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit to pick up. Hey, you crap all over it, and hey, they got this one right.
Also, I just noticed in the curl thing, in the credits all the way down at the bottom, Jay Satiro is credited with the reported by and the patch by.
Yep.
Which means in the link to HackerOne, where this was reported, he produced not just the vulnerability, but the solution as well. Which is pretty cool.
Yep. So there was a lot of build-up to this one.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of buildup. That's why we blogged about it at Finite State, and why it's important to have your software bill of materials and your supply chain security in order, so that, oh my gosh, it's going to be a big thing. And he's like talking it up, and like we're kind of hard to tell whether he was being sarcastic about, you gotta wait, can't wait for this one, and I'm holding on to this because it's going to be a high. But was it really going to be a high given the recent crapping all over? And so there was some of that. It turns out it's a high, but it, like, your assessment was the same as mine, Paul. Like, you've got to be in the right place at the right time with a certain set of situations. And, and like, as always, like, if an adversary sends a specifically crafted URL, like, that's not hard. But still, you've got to have a configuration where sock size proxy is used, and yeah,
it's tough to gauge how like widespread it will be.
Yep,
you know, given the
agreed.
libcurl is pretty. I mean, if you just do a search on your system for libcurl, I was like, oh yeah, there's the regular libraries. Then I'm like, oh, look what happens when it goes through varlib docker. Like all my Docker containers have libcurl on them. Like, ew. Those got to be updated too.
But so yeah, we finally got our answer. We talked about it last week. We got an answer. Today was the day. Updated our blog post today. So yeah.
While we're on larger headline Linux open source vulnerabilities, GNOME or GNOME, how do you guys prefer that I say it? Do you prefer GNOME?
I want you to say both.
For GNOME. Or do you
I want you to say how you want to say it, Paul. Just like your OS int will never get old for me.
I like
GNOME it.
I like to say GNOME.
I like it
because I say GNOME.
I say GNOME. That's how I say it. Because I think GNOME sounds weird to me.
And Linus Torvalds pronounces Linux.
I know. We could do a whole segment on pronunciation.
Is wrong.
Did you ever used to play Gnip?
No.
Ping
Or
pong?
was it Nip? Or was it Nip-Nop?
I'm saying GNOME.
Ping pong?
Well, some people.
I'm gonna go make myself a GIF peanut butter sandwich. Okay.
A GIF.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right on
peanut butter sandwich. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Now you did it.
So GNOME Linux bug is in the libq. Did I say that right? libq library. Yeah, libq library. So here's the way this one.
But you didn't say GNOME right. I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
I said GNOME.
Yeah.
So here's what happens. There's a vulnerability in libq that when it parses certain malicious Q files, leads to remote code execution. There is a process in GNOME that is called tracker miners, which is included in GNOME-based Linux distros, responsible for indexing files in the user's directory. So when they appear in the search results. So what happens is you download a malicious Q file. There's a background process in Linux that goes, oh, I need to parse that, and goes, oh, remote code execution. So all you need to do in this scenario is download this file, and the indexing process in Linux goes, yeah, sweet, I'll just parse that and pwn myself. It's great. Also, there was a bonus. So we're going to talk about breaking out of sandboxes in another Linux story that I have as well. And breaking out of sandboxes, so the author of the original exploit that hasn't released all the details yet said, like, I found this thing, it's remote code execution, but I realized that I needed to break out of a seccomp sandbox. And I did this thing and then realized I could break out of a seccomp sandbox. So there's another vulnerability that needs to be patched. So like in the process of finding and exploiting this vulnerability, the author, did a little creative thinking and was like, oh, I can get around that this way. And like, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to be able to do that. There's a bonus vulnerability in there as well that breaks out of one of the Linux sandbox and privilege container kind of mechanisms, you would call it in seccomp. This is my story number 4. All the links that you need are there about all of this stuff. So make sure you patch. I also kind of struggle like validating that I've patched this. Both when we come down to curl and also libq, like how do I know that this has been patched? Like if my distro, now I'm going to make an argument for CVE, like, shouldn't my distro maintain a stream of like, in this update, these CVEs were patched, kind of thing, so that I can go like validate that? Because just going
Like
off version,
a patch bill of materials.
exactly, Tyler. Like in that, I want some form of whatever it is.
But now we have POS. We have patched bill of material.
I want
a P-bomb.
I want an attestation that this patch has been applied and a way to just verify that, right? Because I can verify I'm on
P-bomb's going to happen.
something like that.
Well, we've got F-bombs for firmware bill of materials. We've got P-bomb for patch bill of materials. We've got security as a service, which obviously abbreviates to SecAS.
But you got a lot of Linux distributions doing this different ways, right? Like a lot of Linux distributions have their own patch moniker that's not the CVE that ties back to a CVE, and they have to do this because maybe I'm not fully incrementing the version number, I'm backporting a patch or whatever,
and not updating the version number. Yeah, the version number.
It's I just want a way to without
Red Hat, I'm looking at you.
I mean, it's like you need a commercial vulnerability scanner to go scan my system to make sure that I did apply this patch. Like I updated today. Did the patch really apply or not? And oftentimes what I find myself doing, which I think is probably the most reliable method, I'm like, well, if there's an exploit, I'm like, just run the exploit. But then if you're going around willy-nilly downloading exploits, that's bad too, because the exploit could have a backdoor code in it as well. But oftentimes I find myself like, oh, let me run the proof of concept of the exploit, see if I'm vulnerable after I apply the patches, and that's how I know. And are we going to do that in all of our production systems?
Nope.
I mean, probably not. So that's my thing about a couple of the Linux ones. There was also, speaking of sandboxes, Ubuntu Linux 2310. The headline reads as adding a important new security feature. And basically what they're doing is they're applying AppArmor profiles to other applications like web browsers, which in theory I think is a great idea. Why not apply AppArmor profiles to everything? Mm-hmm. The problem is, when I did a little bit of cursory Google searching, I found a bypass for AppArmor that hasn't been fixed, which basically means if you've put an AppArmor profile that says regular users shouldn't be allowed to execute Perl, if the regular user creates a shell script with a shebang to Perl, the Perl script will execute. Mm-hmm. So you can bypass AppArmor profiles just by creating a shell script with a shebang in it. And that bug has not been fixed.
Yep.
I mean, maybe distributions have, talk about utopian world. Maybe distributions have seen this and have done something to prevent it, but I don't think so. This bug is still listed as undecided and unassigned. I didn't test it personally, but yeah.
And what you said, all of a sudden in Ubuntu 2310, they're going to apply AppArmor profiles, and I kind of snorted a little bit there. And because I'm like, AppArmor's been in Ubuntu forever.
Oh yeah, but I mean, this is
and
important.
It's finally going to get applied out of the box.
It is applied out of the box. So I checked my Manjaro distribution, and it does apply some AppArmor profiles, and I did go in and look at them, and it is for certain processes. It puts certain rules around them. But in 2310, I think the difference is it's going to apply those. So Canonical will supply pre-built AppArmor policies for popular programs like Chrome, Firefox, and Thunderbird.
Nice.
So they're putting AppArmor profiles around the browser. Now, when I checked my Linux distro, there was no AppArmor profiles applied to any kind of browser. So to me, that was the difference.
Yeah. So, and like second paragraph not second paragraph, multiple paragraphs in, it definitely said that AppArmor has been built into Ubuntu since Ubuntu 7.10.
Yeah.
In 2007.
Oh yeah, AppArmor has been a thing for a long time.
And I love it that they're including that. I've been a Ubuntu user for a long time and still am, and you can pry it from my cold dead hands.
I'm sorry,
but Ubuntu 2310 is a great place to put this in because it's going to be a fucking train wreck for usability, and that's why it's the .10 release as opposed to the .4 release.
Sure.
The .4s are the one you want to use because
I was also looking at the AppArmor profiles for Snap as well, and Snap applies its own. I don't know if it uses AppArmor plus. I think it uses AppArmor plus something else to provide that sandbox. But that's often what you run into is if I use the Snap version of an application, The sandboxing around Snap doesn't let me access, like, if it's OBS and it's in a sandbox Snap and I try and share my screen or do a screencast, like, it doesn't work because it doesn't have the permissions because it's sandboxed from doing those things.
Yep.
That's the issue that I ran into with Snap, was it made it unusable in its sandbox. So I can totally see that happening with this as well. Okay. I think those were the Linux ones that were making headlines this week.
Let's let somebody else
You
get
wanna-
a story.
Yeah.
You want a weird story?
Yeah.
By the way, it's Prime Days. They have a lot of monitors on sale, which means I'm buying some. So
A lot of stuff on sale.
I already got monitors on sale. Thanks, Lee.
And look for hardware to hack too.
there's actually a surprising amount of stuff at very reasonable prices to play with.
I went to Amazon for the Prime Day, Josh, and I told it to show me deals that are relevant to my purchasing history. And I saw several different models of Fluke multimeters on sale.
Didn't know Amazon sold sex toys.
No, not that kind of Fluke. Fluke, like multimeters.
Larry, I was just going to go for the alien fleshlight and the 50-gallon barrel of lube.
You can get a hell of a deal on that emergency
Oh, God.
hand crank.
Do you still have
radio
that in the
you
studio?
Yep.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it's right there.
Right
Yeah.
behind me.
It doesn't have the pump thing on it anymore, but
Because Paul used
How do you know
it
it
all.
hasn't gone bad?
He used it all.
that's right. First couple of weeks, it was empty. What are you talking about?
Yep.
So
Head to toe, Josh.
Actually, he spilled it in the garage, and now he can park an infinite number of cars in there.
when it comes to stories you want to talk about, I'm totally trolling
dear
Tyler
God.
with my
Okay, I'm sorry.
my story number 11.
Lee,
Let's
do
go.
us-
Lee's story number 11 is RS 1680 Crow heist. How this ex-banker hacked a payment gateway to steal funds.
In other words, crypto stealing, Tyler.
Yeah. There
Sorry,
was
bud,
a
but I just couldn't help but
substantial
think of
amount
this. I mean,
funds
there's,
stolen.
Yeah, we haven't had a good.
one of the gang was a banker, so we had some insider information. And there was another one apparently got pissed off at a company and found their weak spot, and then they jumped into it. That's basically $2 billion what is that?
RS 16,180 core is roughly, it's like $180 million.
Yeah, it says
a lot of
approximately $2 billion there.
2 billion?
$2 billion is what the Lee put in there.
100,000.
What the hell is a crore to begin with? Is that
The
crypto?
value
It's
of that
crore?
USB stick you can't find, Tyler.
No, it's still a shitload of money, whether it's 180 million or 1.8 billion. It's
Yeah, they've been
Still a haul.
they've been doing this for a while. It doesn't say exactly how long they were doing it, but the way they pulled this off was definitely through some inside knowledge, and they've got a pretty good handle on who did it and where the money was headed. But I'm not sure that they've completed the investigation to apprehend and or seize assets. So
yeah.
people don't realize how hard it is to actually embezzle and move money, even in crypto world, and get away with it. Like, we track money, we track long-standing money that's moved, year over year, different washers. We can track it all the way through washers. That's not that easy to hide that much money. So as they're looking through this, like, at some point that money gets liquidated and seized, depending on the investigation and which country it's ends up in for exchange. And maybe some people get some money back, but that's a shit ton of money to not, to have pulled out of any given market. People don't realize what that does to an exchange or even crypto valuations across exchanges. So,
But the crore is not crypto. It's just a
Or
unit
that's
of
just, that's just your, that's just that's a fiat currency. So the crypto side of this, I'm not sure that there was any crypto involved, unless they were laundering it through there. So they were using back end insider information into the banking, the way that the transfers were happening, similar to like our ACH. The core back end transfers looks like is what they were leveraging in India. Was it India? I believe it was India that this took place. So, yeah, it's a lot of money. In fact, I'm very curious what happens to the money that is seized, and or how that affects their overall fiat, because that is a substantial percentage of fiat that is held up in the single attack. So, and it says there's a lot of banks involved as well.
Yeah. Something like 260 accounts altogether, something in that range. And it was apparently another theft that led them to this one.
Yeah, system core accounts would probably be the only ones that would hold that much money as kind of the fiat intermediary. So that's again, that has bigger ramification than just the money's missing. Like, that affects banks and their ability to conduct business and transactions.
Tyler, I'm going to switch gears because I'm noticing your background in the support of Israel, which I back 1,000%. And we had a couple of stories on that. I want to preface it with, a lot of times you talk to your wider circle of friends, and some of you may fall in this thing too, like following the geopolitical landscape all across the globe is super hard. And we're also, I think, a disadvantage here in the U.S., where mainstream media in the U.S. is not covering all of the conflicts going on, such as the conflicts that happened in Armenia that we covered a few weeks ago as well. And so oftentimes we have to rely on other media sources for that. I want to give a shout out to a podcast that I love called The Jordan Harbinger Show. Episode number 407 is the chronicling of an undercover agent. So this person, Mossab is his name, was the son of one of the co-founders of Hamas. He was also an agent for Israeli Mossad, and he defected to the U.S. Basically, he couldn't deal with the stress. Right? He's like, I had to lie to everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Including sometimes, it's like the whole thing. Like, I couldn't deal with the stress, and you kind of can't blame him for that either. And so this podcast interview is one thing you should listen to, but also this person's wrote a book, and there's a documentary called The Green Prince. So if you want to kind of dig into a little more of what is going on in the world, specifically with this conflict, that's my recommendation for a story that is happening in the context of this conflict. This morning, I was thinking, as our interview today is actually was supposed to be with someone who is residing in Israel and had to cancel for obvious reasons, and totally understand. But I was like, the number of cybersecurity startups, how are they being impacted with this? Because folks are basically reservists in the military, and they have to go back and defend their country.
And according
I respect that 1,000%.
And according to the news, Israel just called up 300,000 reservists.
Yep.
There you go.
And one of my stories here, if we're
unlike Russia, they'll actually arm them.
Well,
that doesn't include non-military reservists that are headed that way, contractors and or such other groups. Right. So there's a substantial influx happening right now.
Yep.
Yeah, but Tyler, if you're Israeli, you're a veteran.
Correct.
You are.
Over
so they've got 300,000 veterans that are headed that way, and another at least 100,000 non-military combatants to back that. So it's a substantial number.
And this was a couple of my stories on this too, if we're going down that way. One of them was my story number 10. Is that many folks are having to leave their startups and or their companies to go fight. And Armis, and one of the article, my number 10, said Armis lost 15% of their workforce overnight by just the reservists being called up.
It's a pretty big number, and honestly, like, I really hope a lot of those cyber guys are being leveraged in their full capacity, not just boots on the ground, because
I agree.
Obviously they have a lot of talent within inside of 8200 and 4500 and all the other groups over there for Mossad and the intelligence IDF, but with that, the number of cyber attacks happening, like just across a lot of the actor groups I'm in, I mean, you've got Pakistan hopping in, you've got Killnet dropping in, you've got a whole bunch of just different adversaries just going hog wild. Russia's hopping in on a bunch of stuff. So the muddy waters for cyber attacks and the unknown quantification of who's doing what and attribution and their end goal is causing some serious upstream and downstream catastrophes for ongoing, long-standing ops and or OPSEC. So what they've been holding on to, what they're going to use, all those things are now kind of up in the air, and the people that have operations going are not touching anything because they don't want to end up messing up something on Mossad's side, messing up something in IDF's current operation, or get in there and muddy the waters, and now we don't know which is adversary and which is friendly. So the deconfliction has become very, very hard for many of the people in the cyber arena.
Yep. And my other article there from Dark Reading, my story number 5, how Israeli cybersecurity will respond. Some of the figures in there, they were basically saying, yeah, just because they're a cybersecurity company in Israel, they're already under attack, and the escalation of the current conflict and the declaration of war have arguably increased that 100-fold, and so forth. And great quote in this article from Mr. Carlos Perez, former co-host of this show and the practice lead at Trusted Sec. Research practice lead. He is basically saying that it depends mainly on business buy-in and budgets. Do they get targeted with a larger volume of attacks than most organizations, which puts them at a higher risk level, and they'll continue to be vulnerable, but all about what you planned for.
I think it's interesting to Tyler's point, right? When you have two countries that are at odds.
For the record, Hamas is not a country.
Yeah, I know. I
just making sure.
When I mentally corrected myself when I said that.
I verbally corrected you. How's that?
Yes. But when you're at odds with country or extremist group, is that extremist group the correct term? Is that
sure
a better? It's a better term than country, obviously.
For Hamas,
terrorist group.
Terrorist group. Thank you.
They're a terrorist group.
You implant in each other's systems. But then when conflict escalates, do you exercise such access?
Yep, mutually assured destruction.
But also you give up your spot, basically, right? I mean, it's back to Jeff.
What? Huh?
It's back to Jeff's analogy. If you have intelligence and you blow up a plane, and there's no other way that you could have figured that out other than there's some kind of intelligence.
The Coventry thing.
Yeah. So if you're in some system of your enemy and you exercise that access, they will then figure out that, they had access to that through some means, and then you burn that means.
Yeah, take that back to World War II, is that
correct?
The Allies chose very strategically how they would act after they cracked the Enigma. Because if all of a sudden they started going immediately after the high-value targets, the Nazis would have known, oh my God, all of our communications has been intercepted. But by doing maybe a bunch of littler stuff, which turned the tide of war, as it were, they had no idea that it had been cracked until many years later.
And I think a lot of that is still going on today
for sure.
in conflicts such as this.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, to clarify, Larry, the prime example from World War II was not the Enigma machine; it was the breaking of the Japanese code machines.
Right.
Yes.
And they were able to get the architect of Pearl Harbor, General Yamamoto,
correct.
Or Admiral Yamamoto.
Yeah, you are definitely correct, Jeff. But it's a similar type of scenario with.
But absolutely, I mean,
Enigma.
but I have issues with NSA. I think people have probably picked up on that. But one thing that they really did well, and I've always been impressed with, and not just NSA, but all of the intel communities for the Allies, the fact that the Enigma was broken was kept a secret for 50 years.
Wow.
I
didn't realize
impressive.
it was that long. Yeah.
Yep.
It was 50 years.
And to this day, the people that worked on the project and worked at Bletchley Park still are in many cases reluctant to talk about it, because even though they were told that this is no longer classified, you can talk about it, they felt that that was a secret that they needed to take to the grave with them, even in some cases from their spouses.
But you can get that mentality that's been ingrained in you almost your entire life. And so why change, right? It's not like they were clamoring to get it out. They knew that stuff, and they were like, you know what? I'm just going to play it safe. Never going to tell anyone. Doesn't matter if it's declassified or not. I'm just going with my mentality is not going to tell anyone.
Yep. I filed paperwork.
Yep.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a tangent, but since we're talking intel agencies, I mean, this is, I've known people from my NSA days that, when I started there, nobody said, you weren't allowed to say that you worked at NSA. You were supposed to say, I worked for the Department of Defense. That was our mantra. Had to hide your badge when you went out and all that kind of stuff. And to this day, there's people that I know that are, older than me, older timers that are still reluctant to say where they work. And it was, some of them had apoplexy when they started putting exit signs up on the highway that's right outside of Fort Meade saying, NSA, exit here. So, it's part of the change in culture. But what I really wanted to get to was I happened to be invited to Fort Meade a couple weekends ago for an NSA alumni day. They were trying to basically, it was a recruiting pitch for people that were former employees of NSA to consider coming back to work for them. And one of the things that they talked about was how NSA acknowledges that they need to kind of change their stance on everything being secret, and we're not allowed to talk about anything, especially in the world of cyber, where so much stuff is out there in the open anyway. So supposedly they have programs in place for where people like me that haven't had an active clearance in decades can possibly come back and contribute and work in an unclassified setting that's maybe off the main campus. But they at least acknowledge that while it historically was very important, we're in a new world now where. I tell the story, and I think I told it when I, told my backstory for you guys. Anything that we did against a classified system had to be classified at the level of the target. So if I was trying to pen test a top secret network or server back in the day, anything I did had to be classified top secret, including what does Paul refer to it? OSINT, things like. Things as innocuous as a ping command, which which we all know came with the operating system. But if we issued a ping command, that was classified top secret. So they know that they need to move beyond that. But it's hard. It's hard to get people to think differently.
There's my thing. Operating systems, abbreviated OS. And I see OS and I say OSINT, but it's open source intelligence gathering, OSINT, and I just my brain, I can't retrain my brain.
Well, that's why I put in the Discord it's OPSEC, not OPSEC.
Mm-hmm. And right. Jeff, it was a little story time. I don't know if they still do it. It's been a little bit of time too since in-person classes for me, but at SANS we'd be in class and you'd be looking at people with printed badges with their name on it and so forth, which you had to wear to be able to get into your appropriate classrooms. And people that worked for the CIA, their employer said CIA, and people that worked for the FBI said FBI. And then there would be this other group of people where their badge says DOD.
Mm-hmm. They were NSA.
Right. NSA. And I can remember Kevin Johnson having some student come up and talking with him, and he said, "Who do you work for?" And he was kind of like, "Yeah, I work for the DoD." And Kevin immediately says, "Oh, so you work for the NSA?" He's like, "How'd you know that?" Because you're the only people that put the DoD on the badge.
Yeah, process of elimination.
One of the worst kept secrets.
Exactly. And this was a relatively young pup or yet relatively young student, so they were kind of flabbergasted that Kevin knew that.
I want to go to my story number 7, which affords us the luxury of talking about very general topics. I think that who was the author of this, Mike Privet, did a great job.
Or is it Mike Privet?
Privet.
I don't know.
Privet. No, I think you're right. Privet is probably a better way to say
OSINT
that.
or
I think
OSINT?
it's Privet.
Yeah. Mike Privet. So I want to thank Mike because I think we could make 25 segments just out of his 25 different statements there. And I want to, I'll just pick one at random. So Mike's 25 hard-hitting lessons from 17 years in cybersecurity.
There's no such thing as random. You're bringing bias into this.
So Jeff, you pick the number and make Paul talk about it.
14.
14. Assert without experience is like a knife without an edge. Okay.
He's not anything wrong.
It's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
It's true.
Oh, it's not wrong.
I also liked cybersecurity is 10% tech and 90% diplomacy.
Mm-hmm. That what? Take that back to Albert Einstein, or no? That innovation is 10%.
Edison.
Yeah, is 10% something and 90% perspiration. 10% inspiration
90%
and 90% perspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I disagree, however, with the diplomacy, not the Edison quote. I think that if you want to do an honest thing about security, information security is 70% infrastructure and system administration, 20% diplomacy, and 10% actual security. You're wrong, Jeff. I'm right.
But in any of that system administration and configuration, how much of that is diplomacy to the security team to convince those folks to do that?
Oh, sorry, Larry. I'm shaking my head.
I like
Josh
number 10.
because
I like number.
information security existed before the internet.
Yeah,
So
it didn't exist.
It didn't start
But I
as a
think that-
technology thing
But I think
at all.
But I think Josh, you're taking it too literally. I think with the
Yes, it did, Jeff. It was technology even before it was computers. Technology is not computers. Technology is things. Okay? And if you set up your paper files wrong, infrastructure and
But I think
administration.
Josh and Jeff both, you're looking a little too deep into it. I think what Mike is trying to say is...
Yes, that's who we are.
Yes, but I think what Mike is trying to say, let's take the numbers out of it, that cybersecurity is more about diplomacy than it is about technology.
The blinky box.
And I think we can all agree if we simplify that statement without the numbers. I think Mike was trying to make a point that it's more about diplomacy than tech. We could argue the percentages and the nitty-gritty details for the next hour if we wanted to, but I don't think that's the best usage of our time.
And Lee had a comment.
Yeah.
He had a comment here.
Yeah, Lee.
Yeah. So I was hanging in on number 12 when we were talking about the value of certifications. That certs get you through HR, but experience gets you through life. It's the same thing as number 14 in a way, but I think it's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
You need both.
Yeah, he says use a combination of both for your benefit. And that's, if we had to summarize everything I've said on the show about certifications and getting into the field, I mean, that pretty much summarizes it, right? Use both. Experience and certification.
Which ties into number 9. You need a job to get experience, but you need experience to get a job.
Welcome to cybersecurity. Yeah.
Yeah, the double birds.
Well,
right, Josh.
But to dovetail on that, and all this stuff is intertwined. Most of us, didn't set out to have a career in cybersecurity, and most of us came out of a technical role, IT administrator, developer, help desk, whatever it is.
All of the above.
So the idea that to get into cybersecurity, you need to have a couple years of experience in IT or doing something else, it's not a stretch.
Nope.
When you think about it.
Most companies don't pay for security. They pay to avoid fines.
Wholeheartly agree.
Right? So cybersecurity isn't really an investment. It's more of an insurance.
PCI. It's time for our PCI moment.
This was this
is the PCI.
This is PCI. This is PCI in a nutshell, right? I want to be PCI compliant so I can avoid paying fines. And the byproduct of PCI is I get some security behind it. But yeah. Well, I mean,
not only that, Paul, but as companies have learned how to, let's say, dodge or game the system of PCI, they've inadvertently made themselves more secure. The big thing being the idea of network segmentation and isolating the part of your network that handles credit card data. To be able to do that, you had to be able to demonstrate that payment card data wasn't everywhere else in your network. How did you do that? You had to do inventories. You had to understand data flows. You had to talk to people about why are you dumping the database into a spreadsheet and keeping it on your laptop and taking it home every night? Do you really need to do that? So there was a lot of cleanup and reducing of the footprint. I mean, ultimately, most retailers have found out they don't need to keep payment card data at all. But they didn't do it from the perspective of let's make ourselves more secure. They did it from the how do we limit our expense and how do we make this PCI thing as minimal a pain in the ass as possible.
Well, I think what PCI also helped many of us realize is that it's a data security standard, and if you secure the data, that's volumes to your cybersecurity strategy overall.
Moving on to another one on the list because we got a lot potentially.
Yeah, and I got to plug my laptop.
And I want to hear from one from Sam and one from Tyler. One of your favorites.
Pick a number.
I kind of put you on the spot, so I'll go. One of mine, number 17. Cybersecurity conferences are better for catching up with colleagues and making new friends than for shopping for new tech.
It's networking. Agree.
I haven't been to a talk at a conference in probably a decade. Well, I mean, I've probably been to one or two, but
no, we've been to. Tyler and I have sat through talks together this year at a conference.
I mean, I've been to very few talks. We're very
selective.
Though.
Yep,
we're very selective, and we go with friends and we hold hands. Well, at least Tyler and I did. I don't know if that's just us, but you know.
Well, isn't that what everyone does?
I thought so.
Look, I'm holding a conference this weekend where there's literally whoever wants to talk. There's a projector. Go talk. We don't fucking care. There's no CFP. Yeah. Awesome. You just go frigging talk. And honestly, it's so much less stress to organize. It's so much less stress to run. Our entire cost for running this conference is minimal. And everybody's going to be able to get together. How are you doing? What's going on? I'm working here. We're also holding it outdoors so people can stay apart if they want to. If they're sick, stay over there.
No, but I love this though. It's a conference where talks are not the central theme. Everyone comes to hang out, and hey, if you got something to share, here's a projector, and let's do a presentation. I love this concept, Josh. Wholeheartedly, I embrace it.
We're testing it out, and honestly, if it goes well, we may do it again next year. Again,
it's a fascinating idea. A conference without talks.
It's an unconference.
That's right.
Well, I mean,
what you're basically.
There will be talks. There will be talks, but I've got a 20-foot inflatable screen and I got a projector I got to pick up in Philly tomorrow, so it'll be a daylight projector because they're.
But I feel like we're in this moment where
Sam's
the Seinfeld is pitching a show about nothing. Stan is like, the show is literally about nothing. We're like, the conference is not about talks. There's no talks, and the investors like, what?
Sam.
But I want to push back on this idea. I think it's a bad idea, and I've been here before. The problem is, if I think about my history, for the first several years, I went to the talks. The noobs who don't know anything, they really want to hear the talks until they get a basic foundation. Then after a while, you've heard it all, and you don't care about the talks anymore. But newcomers really need structure because you ask them, what are your goals? What do you want to learn? And they say, I don't know. I don't even know what I should learn.
Yeah, I want to go to talks and figure it out.
That's a really great point, Sam.
So you got to, but to Sam's point, you got to have a track for new, if you're getting into InfoSec, here's some structure, right? If you
and that's valid. And
those of us that are old, which is on the show is maybe everyone except for Tyler still looks pretty young, but. If you've been in the industry for a while, you're going to hang out with friends, right? But if you're just getting in, you don't have that network yet because you're just getting in the field. You need, to Sam's point, some structure. That structure traditionally has been, I'd see that there's these talks and I want to go to these talks, right? And so
And
in
I'm gonna
place of
push
that,
back
you
on
need,
that.
but in place of that, Josh, you just need some more formal structure. If it's not talks, it's got to be something else for going, hey, you're getting into InfoSec. I mean, I wouldn't say, if you're a noob, go here. But if you're getting into InfoSec, come here.
You need your
So
cyber guide. You need a mentor to go and make introductions, figure out.
I
and
agree,
introduce you
Tyler.
into the groups of
You need a
people. Like the
mentorship
talks-
program. Yes.
The talks don't make introduction. It makes networking hard. It disrupts the status, but you need people to introduce you into places that interest you, which means you need people that have been in the industry in the areas that are interest. Like Birds of a Feather is a great kind of conversation place. That was kind of how it happened. That's what happened.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
so-
glad you.
so let
I'm
me-
glad you brought that up, Tyler. I'm going to go first, Josh. Throwing
No,
H
please,
down.
please.
All
Go
right,
ahead,
Jeff,
Jeff,
and then Josh.
Sounds good.
No, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I mean, there's huge value in the networking and the hanging out, making friends, seeing old friends, making new friends. But we that are the old timers need to be deliberate about looking around and noticing the new people and pulling them in because they don't know any better. They're going to the talks. I mean, a shout out to Cole and Melanie. Last night of CornCon, I went, after the after party, I wanted to go back to my hotel, sit outside and just have a cigar. These two people came out and they were kind of looking around and I'm like, why don't you join me? And they're like, yeah, I got cigars upstairs. So just ended up, sitting for the length of a cigar, talking to two people that were, Melanie isn't even in cyber, but she came to my talk on, you might be a hacker. That's not the name of it, but, Cole's in the business and, we just chatted for 2 hours and, made sure we connected on it, LinkedIn.
And Jeff, you've done a good job, and we've conspired together. I think when we were at Charm, we were at the speaker dinner, and you and I kind of looked at each other and were like Jeff, do we sit with people we know, or do we go find a table where we don't know anyone? I'm like, I think I was telling Jeff, I'm like, I think the right thing to do right now is like, I want to sit at a table where you and I don't know anyone. And we just want to connect with people. And that's how us not older, but if you've been in the industry for a while, that's the kind of things that you need to do.
You're fast approaching that. You're older, Paul. Embrace it.
I know. I embrace
You're
it.
not as old as me.
So I'm gonna sort of summarize because I think this is a fascinating discussion and I really appreciate it. What I'm hearing is talks for somebody that's been around for a while is almost useless. We're going to see. Well, I saw that 10 years ago. I saw that 20 years ago.
I wouldn't say
whatever.
useless, but we're very selective, Josh.
Very selective. Okay. What we want to go to a conference for is to see our friends, to see our colleagues, find a new job, catch up on what's going on in the industry. Mm-hmm. I get more news by talking to the people at the conference than I go by going to the talks. Are there good talks? Absolutely. I am not in any way denigrating them, but I'm going to get less out of them than a noob. Wait. Noobs need structure, mentorship, and structure. That was beautifully said. Thank you. That was lovely. Okay. And for noobs to need, strats, like I buy the videos and watch them later.
Sure.
For noobs to get structure, what I like is I like the villages because then you can go to a functional area. Like you like wireless, go to the wireless village, watch the talks that they have there, and let the villages have the talks. Okay. And they can have short talks, the fireside chats or fire talks, or they can have long form if they want. They can even have seminars and workshops because that's their thing. And if you go to wireless and go, shit, I hate this. Great. The next village is around the corner.
Yep.
Okay.
Also, I just want to point out that Bob Stratton, thanks for listening to the show, man. Like, you're a pillar of the community and you're listening to our show. Thanks, man.
Speaking of just as a tangent, I wonder when we hear about the Sans Difference Maker Awards, because we were nominated for 2 different categories.
We were nominated.
You were? Is there any way people could vote on that, Larry?
No,
Not anymore.
Because it ended yesterday. It ended on the 10th.
I wonder who won.
Exactly. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know yet.
Oh,
We'll
fingers
find out.
crossed.
Yep.
I was going to say.
my point about this was
I
that
think you left one
I
thing
love
out
the idea
there,
of taking the
Josh.
noobs.
Hold on.
Come on.
Lee?
Josh.
Oh.
Lee.
Lead then Josh.
Oh, Josh, I think you left out one thing for us is that, as for the more seasoned folks, not only we go there, but we ought to network with our friends and catch up, but we also are looking for something new, somebody new has got some cool stuff going on.
Agreed.
We kind of, you're. I don't want to put any negative in that. It's like it's a cool opportunity to meet somebody you hadn't heard before, some ideas you hadn't heard to have a hallway coffee, whatever, chat with them about what really's got them excited. Actually, it's fun to see people really excited about something, even if it's something you know about. It's really fun.
I just want to say thanks to Mike Prevet for that article. I may call upon concepts from this article for future shows. It was very thought-provoking and helped form a discussion that could go on forever. But I do want to cover some other news articles as well. Specifically, my story number 2, I think Larry had this story, and maybe Lee. Cisco warns of a critical flaw in the emergency responder.
It's not a critical flaw. It's a gaping hole.
It's pretty bad. A vulnerability in Cisco emergency responder could allow unauthenticated remote attacker to log in to an affected device using the root account, which has a default static credentials that cannot be changed or deleted.
And I'm gonna split hairs a little bit here. That Cisco warns that an unauthenticated remote attacker can log into devices using a default root account that can't be changed. So then aren't they authenticated attackers?
I think everyone's an authenticated attacker. If the root password credentials are known and static and can't be changed and they're public, then everyone's an authenticated attacker.
Right.
Right?
So,
I mean,
an unauthenticated remote attacker, but they have credentials, so they're authenticated.
You get a shell. You get a shell. Everyone gets a shell.
Yeah.
It's great.
But still, seriously effing bad, which got a same CVSS score of as a 9.8 as the original curl vulnerability that had already been patched and was.
I understand. Why? What does it take to get a 10.0 CVSS score? Shouldn't this be a 10.0?
Didn't the WebP one get a 10?
Yeah, WebP got a perfect 10.
I mean, they should be proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Now, was it CVSS 2 or 3?
You know,
and who scored it? Who scored it? Was that the NVD official score, or was that?
Yeah, we're splitting hairs at this point. Sorry, Lee.
So Cisco said the reason they had these hard-coded credentials is because they needed them for the development, verification, etc. process. I guess they were assuming they would get pulled out before deployment, but I'm kind of going, this is Cisco. They should know. That's a pretty lame excuse for somebody that big and that experienced.
I wouldn't be surprised in typical Cisco fashion if this was an acquisition of someone else's technology that they integrated. And during the discovery process, they had no idea, and then they found out after it was too late.
I just don't understand the cannot be changed. Like what? Yeah. What leads you to a system architecture where credentials cannot be changed? I feel like that should be in some compliance standard that if you're delivering a product, you can't ship it with credentials that can't be changed.
And if you do, some sort of taser should go off until you fix it.
Yes.
Right, Tyler?
Well, the taser is actually part of PCI 4.0, so
nice.
We're good.
Has Tyler tested the taser for its effectiveness? Because I want to see that on video.
Well tested, and it is highly effective against the human nervous system.
Have you been tased, Tyler?
Oh, many times, many times.
Like voluntarily, or?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and you even got a chance to wear a TENS unit.
And the TENS units. I've gotten some good shocks out of some good TENS units.
Yep.
The really good TENS units feel about a third as bad as an actual taser. But the thing is, the TENS units stay on for a longer time.
Is that what you use your bench power supply for? Is that seeing how much?
A lot more amperage than you really want to put through the nervous system in most of the cases.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
By the way, that's a reminder. If you ever see a red taser gun, don't play with it. Those are the ones designed for livestock. That will kill you.
I feel like this is a scene right out of what was the movie?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
No,
Black Mirror.
where they're tasing them
the dog?
in Vegas. What is the? Hangover?
Hangover, yeah.
Hangover.
One of the Hangover ones.
One of the Hangover ones.
Yep.
Anyway.
Oh, that's right. They tased
Yep.
them, didn't they?
How did we get from default credentials to tasing?
I don't know. The irony is, Tyler, that I stayed at that hotel a couple weeks back, and I recognized the table. I'm like, that's the table where we put the TENS unit on Tyler while I was trying to write a report. Yeah, that hotel's a piece of shit now.
Why?
Because we could. It was Bluetooth low energy connected.
Oh,
And of
then
course,
okay,
that
makes
means you need
perfect
to
sense.
test it. Is that like when
Because
Travis
it
was
needs to go
testing the
on
dog
me.
collars?
Yep, exactly like that. We needed somebody to put it on. We needed to connect to it via Bluetooth low energy and see if we could modify it, which is ironically this device that we simulate in 556 and 617 for your Bluetooth low energy lab. We simulated
Collar?
that. No, the TENS unit.
What's a TENS unit?
It's intended to deliver electric shock for pain management and massage therapy.
Yeah. Basically, it makes your muscles contract, and so it'll exercise for you, sort of, as well as
okay.
it'll make the muscles stretch so that they don't. cramp or
Remember the movie
Yeah,
Enter the
okay.
Dragon?
Well, no, I've used one of those when I was rehabilitating my knee.
Yep. Enter the Dragon. Bruce Lee wore one on his abs and would because it would tighten his abs as often as he would do it to do strength training.
It's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But so
You know,
anyway,
I was hoping you were going to describe that device in Ghostbusters. The Bill Murray used.
Proton pack?
oh yeah, the thing on the head that gives the shock. Oh
Yeah,
no, the shock thing. No, the shock
thing where he
thing.
hooked them up to wires and it was negative reinforcement.
Ghostbusters 2.
yes,
That was
negative
Ghostbusters 2.
reinforcement.
Yes.
Right, and it was it was in Ghostbusters 1. It was also in the
Was it?
latest one too, Afterlife. At
Oh.
the very end, you had to watch past the credits.
Oh.
Anyway, how did we get to
spoiler time?
default?
It's the scene. It's the scene with Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, how did we get there?
How
That,
did we get-
that if you deploy
Paul, you
something
said
like
the
that, you should get a
consequence
tased.
should be tased.
I said that consequence should be tased.
Somebody
I
said.
just don't understand that their default, like this is the worst scenario. There's three. Their default, which means you get it no matter, like that's how it comes out of the box. Static credentials, they cannot be changed or deleted. I guess static credentials implies that they can't be changed or deleted, right?
I like hard coded better because it puts the idea of that they're not moving, they're not getting
They're in
changed.
They're in source code, which means
Exactly.
it's compiled in. So the user can, I mean, to say they cannot be changed is, I mean, they can be. It's just really hard.
Right.
to
They
change them.
cannot be
It's
changed by the.
difficult.
and
They
they,
cannot
and they
be
don't know what will break.
Right.
Right.
They cannot
Is
be
the bigger
changed
gist.
by the end user.
Or you could,
Right.
technically.
They
But
cannot be
you
changed
break it.
easily as part of normal operation by the end user. I'll clarify that quite well, which is still bad. I also think that maybe they weren't necessarily public because they were allegedly reserved for during development, and that someone had to discover this as an undocumented type of thing.
So someone reverse engineered the binary and went, ooh, look,
Oh crap! Hey, look at that.
credentials.
Yep. And then it became public.
But Cisco doesn't say who discovered this vulnerability. I looked
Gentlemen don't reverse engineer other people's code.
for that. I don't know about that.
Because that might be a violation of the Digital Money
Or
and
do
Copyright Act.
you? Or do you?
You just
to be nice.
You're NSA.
you,
Yeah.
you just you do compatibility engineering. Tyler, you remember this
But this,
discussion from
but this was an
Guardians,
internal.
because in Guardians doesn't do reverse engineering; they do compatibility
Right.
engineering, so that you can make Metasploit compatible with the vulnerability.
They say there are no workarounds to this vulnerability, which again is back to your point, Larry. The user cannot change these credentials. They also say that Cisco PCert is not aware of any public announcements or malicious use of the vulnerability that's described in this advisory. This vulnerability was found during internal security testing. So Cisco found this on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, after it had been in the wild for how long?
Emergency responder code, if you read what this service does, like Google for Cisco emergency responder, it's kind of interesting how it works. It's
Isn't it a gateway between your VoIP system and E911 that
Yes.
carries along the location information about you and stuff?
Yep, effectively.
enhances the existing emergency 911 functionality offered by the Cisco Unified Communications Manager. It shows that Cisco Unified Commercial Manager sends emergency calls to the appropriate public safety.
It allows if you're on VoIP, if you have this registered. So
Yeah.
I just got done messing with one of these Cisco systems. If you're on VoIP, it can tell you like which floor you have a phone registered. 911 calls from that phone that goes out of SIP trunk. That registered phone correlates in the outbound Unified Communication Manager, the UCM, which floor, which phone that came from, so that gets translated and passed out to the E911 system on the dispatcher's side, so that they have more information. But you have to register all this. It's not done automatically.
If you Google image search for Cisco emergency responder, you get several different Visio diagrams, and I can tell they're Visio by the icons, right? There's several Visio diagrams of exactly how it's connected and where it sits.
Yep. So,
I think it's a physical or virtual appliance. Is that true, Tyler? Did you work with some of these systems lately? It seems like it's
so the Unify, the UCM is typically a virtual unless you're going with a very, very large scale one.
Yeah.
But there's lots of different modules and integrations, like the UCM and the Unity, whether it's a pub or a sub. Those can be physical so part of them do have to be physical, but the other half can be virtual machines.
Yeah.
So each of those pieces, it depends on if you're using, Cisco cores, if those cores are all routed in.
But it seems like the emergency responder thing is a virtual appliance most likely deployed.
So it's a module within inside of the UCM. It's part of a software suite package.
And that's interesting. That module must run a virtualized Linux that has a root default password associated with it.
That's interesting.
I was just trying to conceptualize, like, if it is a root default password, static credentials, that means it's running on some Linux system that's running as an appliance as part of this larger suite of software running independently, right? So it's either hardware or virtual.
The UCM would be an appliance that is deployed that
probably
would have access, but it would be very different to get.
Yeah, or it's a container
access to
right?
that.
Or they're using containers too. I've seen deployments where it's multiple containers inside of a VM, right? We've seen that. Security Onion is actually an example of that. Mm-hmm. In any case,
hey, something a little different.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear Sam's thought on my story number 2, announcing the $12,000 NIST elliptic curve seeds bounty.
Ooh. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, it's. I don't think it has much security significance. It's just addressing. The only significance would be in sort of a conspiracy theory. For the elliptic curves, there are these numbers that we were told to use, and they never explained where they came from. And supposedly they're just the hash of a common English phrase, but the guy that knows died. So the only issue is, of course, because the NSA has been caught doing this several times before, people are afraid that they poisoned it. And that if you use the official recommended constants, then there's a secret backdoor. And so it would be nice if there's an innocent explanation for the constants, other than them being somehow mathematically weak.
Right. So Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, the intent here is that we're given a bunch of those seeds as defined by the NSA. You should use these, and those seeds are derived from some static English phrases. And we don't know what those static English phrases are, so the intent is to reverse map those seeds to those static English phrases.
Well, that would just be to reassure us that they didn't maliciously choose seeds so the NSA can predict all the values, which they absolutely did and got caught doing with a previous elliptic curve system.
Gotcha.
That's the problem. There's these persistent conspiracy theories that the NSA has poisoned everything. And so I always tell my students, whenever they have these crypto systems, they have a contest. And then at the end, they have like 5 runners up, and they pick one, and the U.S. government approves it. And now it's a question of your religion. If you like the U.S. government, you use the approved one. If you don't trust the U.S. government, you deliberately use one of the runners just because it's not the approved one. And therefore, the government didn't get a chance to poison it.
You wonder, who you trust more or less, big tech or the government at this point.
And
big tech pretty much has to use the standard. Anybody that wants to do business with the government has to use the standard government thing. So it's only for people who don't want to sell to the U.S. government or the military, which pretty much takes you out of the Fortune 100, I think.
Interesting. I also think it's kind of interesting, Sam, that you say there's a conspiracy theory about it, yet they've been caught doing this before. So is it all that much of a conspiracy theory if it's true, at least in other cases?
Well, but you don't know that they did it this time. However, they certainly would do it and have done it before. So it's not, like I remember when I was a kid, they said, the CIA is putting LSD in the water supply and stuff like that. And then it turned out they really were. And I was working at Settlement Administration, and they actually fed pregnant women radioactive iron to see what would happen. The government really has done some horrible things.
Yep.
Oh. I mean, so is big tech, but
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't LSD in the water supply.
I mean, so is Microsoft when we talk about authentication. Your story number one, Sam.
Yes. Well,
NTLM goes away.
They're going to retire NTLM apparently.
Yeah,
and
we'll see.
Replace it with Kerberos. Even on your local login, so your local machine is going to run a Kerberos key distribution center. I don't know how this is going to work. This doesn't make much sense to me because Kerberos tickets are only good for 10 hours, and there are security flaws in Kerberos. The key distribution center has a bunch of secrets you can steal.
Yeah, just ask Tim Medine.
No, you can't coerce Kerberos to do anything. That's not a thing.
Yeah, well, just ask Tim Medine, right?
I
heard
totally not a thing.
I heard a quote from Tim Medine the other day. He said, "Holy crap! If I had known that Kerberoasting was going to be a problem a decade later, he's like, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done."
But it's interesting. It ties into my X11 story as well. That I was like, don't read the comments on articles. I mean, unless.
But that's where the gold is.
I know, but you want to read the comment.
Reddit.
It's like you don't want. You shouldn't be reading it, but you find yourself reading the comments, and you just got to take them with a grain of salt. But sometimes they provide some thought-provoking things. So this
which story yours?
So it was my story. My X11 story is story number 11.
Okay,
and they relate to each other because, correct me if I'm wrong, Project Athena was funded by IBM and other big tech companies, executed at MIT, gave birth to both Kerberos, X11, and other things that we still find a lot of vulnerabilities in today. And then I found myself on the Project Athena Wikipedia page and just starting to draw some of these analogies. Yeah, so GTK plus, Qt, Kerberos, X.org, even mentions Mutter in there, window managers like Mutter. But I'm pretty sure Kerberos was part of that too. It influenced development of this computing, LDAP, Active Directory, Instant Message, so Kerberos, and Zephyr notification system, X Windows system. And Project Athena was a joint project of MIT, Digital Equipment Corporation, and IBM to produce campus-wide distributed computing environment. It was launched in 1983. Yep. So when we're referencing things such as Kerberos or X11, it's building upon technology that started its development in 1983 when, like, literally no one was thinking about security. And maybe that's an overstatement. No one was thinking about security in the context of the hyper-connected world we live in today with the internet, right? They were thinking about security in various contexts in 1983, but not in the context that we think about it today. So when we fast forward to today, when like Kerberos has issues, Tyler and Sam both were like, Kerberos has issues, right? No one's going to dispute that. We're also sitting here today going, X11 still has issues, and staggering the issues that, I mean, there's 2013 research that I linked to in my story number 11 that I believe still hasn't been fixed. There's also new stuff. So it was a decade ago.
All of the issues have been addressed, though. We just don't seem to implement them, right? Like
yes,
with signing
addressed but not
and
fixed.
all of the other channel binding, all of that stuff has been addressed. It just is difficult to do,
to implement,
like
and that's exactly where we are. So it was a decade ago that a security researcher commented on X.org server security has been worse than it looks, and that the GLX code, for example, was 80,000 lines of sheer terror, as they describe, hundreds of bugs uncovered throughout the code base, In 2023, new X.org security vulnerabilities continue to be uncovered, 2 of which were made public today and date back to code from 1988. Jesus. 1988. These are 35-year-old bugs? Are you serious?
Well, I'd like to talk about my story number 5. What do you think of the miracle solution of passkeys? I mean, have anybody started using these yet? It's going to be the Google default. And this author is mad and says we shouldn't use it. I'm thinking maybe we should. I'm thinking about this. When I use my phone, I show it my face and I get in, and now I'm in every app on that phone. I don't have to log in again to be on the apps. And yet when I use a computer, I have to separately log into each app. And so they're going to get rid of that and make your computer work the way your phone works. If you can log into your computer, it will then have a stored passkey it will use to log into everything else.
I mean, on my phone, I know I need to Face ID to other apps.
Yeah, maybe it's okay. I mean, in one sense, I mean, if the author is mad because you might have like a weak password to get into your laptop, and then they can get into your email and everything. But I think in reality, our phones already present the same single point of failure from viewpoint of security. And I wonder what you people think.
That's why SIM swapping is such an issue.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it's a single point, but it's necessary for convenience. I'm certainly not going to be typing passwords in that tiny little keyboard on the phone any more often than I have to. And if you care about security, you can use a more secure login on your phone.
Which is probably a better password than most users are going to create anyway.
Is passkeys what? I always I feel like it's one of the things like I read, and then I'm like, oh, that's how it works, and then I completely forget about it. So, Discord's an example, right? Like I have a login for Discord, and I have a multi-factor for Discord. Yep. However, if my login on my laptop expires for Discord, Discord says, hey, just scan this QR code with your phone. So I'm authenticated to the app on my phone, and I go into the settings and I go scan QR code. I scan that QR code. It somehow sends something to the Discord servers that says 2 things. Like 1, yeah, that's Paul, and 2, yeah, he's authenticated, so log him into this app. Is that passkey technology in the back or something? That's something different, right?
It amounts to the same thing. Yeah. That's essentially what it would be.
Ultimately, yeah. And this, I think we talked about this last week, in that I was trying to log into some Google accounts and it wanted to use passkey.
Yep.
And in order to do that, it had to be able to tell that my phone was nearby and was connectable via Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bluetooth in my Mac is fucked up and won't find any devices or won't let me connect anything. And I wasn't connected to my phone because it's not already in the list. And I spent a week trying to log into these accounts because it had to do passkey.
Well, Google will do this thing, and I don't know if this is I believe it's just Android, but Google can send a push notification to your phone as a factor of authentication. It's like some of my accounts, if my YubiKey won't work, it's like, oh, use one of your backup, second factor or whatever, and it's like, do you want me to just send it to you have this device register called Pixel 7. I'm like, yeah, send it to that. It sends it to that. And I click allow, and it's like, oh, yeah, you're good. But I think that's only Google. I don't know. Does that work on iPhone too?
It works on iPhone too.
It works on Microsoft.
Yep.
It works on...
It works if you're authenticated to you've put a Google account on any one of these devices. It works
Google. For anything Microsoft. If you have a Microsoft account registered to an authenticator app, that app is then registered. That registered app then handles the intermediary handoff of your single sign-on SAML tokens back and forth.
I have this on I have this on an iPhone with one of my ISAC groups that I'm a member of.
And it's Google that sends you. Is it Google?
Google or Microsoft, whatever registered app has single sign-on capability that you've authorized.
Yep.
So this will mean 2 things, right? We no longer have to remember a bunch of passwords, and it will be impossible to reuse passwords. So a breach at one site will not expose the password for reuse. Those both seem like really big security improvements to me.
Yeah, because the password sucks in terms of...
502's been trying to show all of the big security improvements. 502 doesn't necessarily need to be a hardware key. Same with single sign-on SAML. I think these are all great ideas. It's just getting everybody to that point, right? We think we had a discussion about why is it so hard for all these legacy apps and legacy things to get to this point when it's all already integrated and accepted? It's disconnecting the legacy things, I think, or making people comfortable with the fact they have to have a pop-up. I don't know.
Well, they also have to make them all interoperate. That's the problem. I think Google's have one and Apple's going to have one and Microsoft is going to have one, and they don't play nice together. That's a real problem.
But Sam, you hit on the point that I think frustrates pretty much every user out there in some capacity, and that is, I have to authenticate to this thing. And how you authenticate to that thing varies. Varies in how they implement it, but also how you set it up. Is that an SMS message because there was no other alternative? Is that a Google Authenticator app because I configured that app? Is that Duo? Is it YubiKey? Is it some other form of second factor, like Google can do a push notification if it's a Google account? All of these things, all these things are different and dependent on two things: how the provider set it up and how you configured it as the user. And we enter these scenarios where I'm like, crap, I need to authenticate to this thing. How is that set up again? And that's bad. I think attackers are going to take advantage of that because it's different.
But I think getting rid of passwords would be moving us into the future.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But I think beyond that, it's an issue of the classic paradigm of something you have, something you know, something you are needs to be rewritten.
Agreed, Jeff.
Because nobody knows anything anymore. It's a lot of haves, and a lot of you are.
Yeah.
I'm an old timer.
Contextual.
I like to believe. Well, it is contextual, but it's not. I mean, when I interviewed, forget his name, but the CEO of LastPass this summer, Black Hat, they were pushing passwordless, and I'm like, well, what exactly is that? Define that. And it was basically anything other than a password. Let's get rid of passwords, which was interesting since they're a password vault. But he astutely pointed out, which is something that I had only figured out 9 months ago, is that if you use a password vault, that's not something you know. That's something you have.
Correct.
Well, if you use Bluetooth and it looks at your face, that is something you have, and that's your physical location and something you are. That's two-factor without a password.
Yep. Yeah, so it's possible, but there's also other things that we can do these days thanks to technology. And I know we've had vendors on in the past year or so talking about this. The geolocation of your phone or the tendencies of they model your behavior, and so they try to somehow keep track of that. There's other things out there that are available. Interestingly enough, I did a little bit of research on this back around Christmas time when I was downtime. I had nothing else to do. The origin of something you have, something you know, something you are, that's less than 20 years old. That mantra of this is how you do two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. I mean, it's less than 20 years old. So it's okay to change it, I think, and I guess that has to be done by NIST, because NIST is the governance group that came up with the term in the first place.
And we have the people pushing this password or passwordless state of mind with vested interest in maintaining passwords. Otherwise, what's the point of having a password vault? We need to get to the point where the password vaults aren't a thing that's a single password that needs to be compromised, that remains signed in. And let me tell you, if I can access your cookies and or your browser because I compromised your device, now I've got all the passwords to all the things, and passwordless because it's in the vault just makes my job easy. Now I know all the services too and the usernames, and magically I can just click and get into everything. So passwordless needs to move to this and not be pushed by password vault vendors, which is where a lot of the password education is happening for things like passwordless.
I want to transition
before you do that.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sam's got to leave in a few minutes, so I wanted to give Sam an opportunity if he had any story he wanted to make sure that he talked about to give him that opportunity.
Oh, I think we brought the ones I thought were the most important.
Cool. All right. I want to make sure Sam had that opportunity.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Sam. I wanted to talk about this Android TV malware that has been the center of.
Nope. Sorry. Move on.
Much of my time recently has been spent on this, and I'm working on a fairly comprehensive blog post on the subject, as myself and others, Larry included, have been looking at the security of these Android devices that we've covered stories on. And I'm working on the chronology.
And I had another one of those devices show up yesterday. Different model, different stuff. But
you can have a lot of fun. But so I traced. Here's where I'm at. I've traced the Android TV malware as far back as 2017, 2016. It has, in early times, ties back to regular Android malware that showed up on some of these Android boxes. I've then traced it back to at least early 2023. I don't have my actual blog post draft in front of me, but I traced it back to different points in time. So suffice it to say, October 2023 is not the first time we've looked at and or seen malware that has been installed on these Android TV devices. Smart TVs as far back as 2017 were reported as having ransomware. They were actually ransomwaring people's TVs, was I believe one of the first times that I had heard about it. So this is not a new thing. However, it's the spotlight is being shined on it because of the sheer number of Android TV devices that have been proven by multiple independent third parties. So we're talking Dr. Web, we're talking Linus Tech Tips, we're talking what's the Human Security released a lengthy research paper that analyzed the Android malware on these devices. So this is a thing. I believe it's a supply chain issue that there are several manufacturers that are bringing to market these very, very cheap Android TV devices that sell for around $30, right? Plus or minus.
Yep.
$10 or so. You can get these devices for $30. Turn any TV into an Android smart TV. Why would you do that? Because all TVs come with some kind of smart technology. My theory is that you buy one of these Android TV devices because you can hack it and or use apps that are already installed to pirate content and have expanded capabilities.
I would also, and I don't want to caveat this a little bit, not every TV comes with smart stuff.
Really? Because send me the ones that don't. Because I'd love to have a TV that's just a friggin' monitor.
And quite honestly, I will say that buying some of the stuff arguably is a little bit of a challenge. But like our camper, we bought a TV that runs off of both 110 and 12 volts.
Yep.
So for the camper, and it has no smart technology. And we bought it 3 years ago.
Nice.
And
wow. I didn't know they made any TVs.
I didn't think they made. Yeah,
No,
they're hard to find.
it's a small TV.
Okay. Yep.
Also, we bought another small TV for our little cottage, and it has no smart stuff in it. So we put a Fire Stick on it.
Yeah. Sure.
We're building a house amongst the trees, and while we're not using a TV, we're going to reuse an old monitor.
Yeah.
It has no smart technology.
No smart TV. Right.
So
There are scenarios,
when
yep.
you get into some of the smaller stuff or some of those smaller applications, like you're not going to buy a 65-inch TV that's not smart.
Right. Okay.
You're gonna buy a 19-inch LCD for your camper or some smaller application that's not smart.
Well, and you buy in bulk, right? You're talking about campers, you're talking about hotels, you're talking about mass-produced in hotel motel lobbies.
no, you're right.
Displays. Those are often even consumer ones. You're talking about a lot of monitors that don't have
Tyler,
smart capabilities.
What you're saying is, like, I'm looking at all these TVs that are here in the studio.
Yep. No,
these are not smart, but they're commercial. The SKU on them is commercial,
Yep.
and they've paid a higher price tag potentially.
Yep.
I mean, maybe because they're buying
They
in
don't
bulk.
have the ad revenue from the other.
And that's
part of the
exactly
TV
where I'm
market.
going, Tyler. What I'm uncovering is that you bring to market these Android TV devices that have Netflix and these other applications on them.
Disney Plus.
Disney
and
Plus.
Amazon,
They can't.
and-
They purposely put in the Android build that you can't remove them from the user access screen.
Right.
If you want to talk about how to get in there and
That's
remove them.
different. Under the covers is a different
Under
story,
the covers, contact me. I can tell you, how easy or difficult that's going to be because it varies. But you can remove them with some technical know-how. Without that, just going through the menu, you can't remove them. And they're brokering deals. Like, hey, you could buy an Android TV for $30 and it's Netflix on there. I can't remove Netflix. And therefore more people are going to use Netflix. So does Netflix give kickback?
Oh yeah,
To
subsidized for
offset
sure.
that. They're sub. So all these apps are subsidized. Also the TVs too. I have a Samsung TV, big name brand TV. Obviously,
Yep.
It's with a frame TV. I can't remove the YouTube app from
Right.
it.
It's like
From the menu.
It's like going to the local big box, like the
Yeah.
discount, like BJ's or Costco. BJ's near us. You go in and they've got this whole display of these smart TVs.
Yep.
That are like 65 inches and they're super fucking cheap, because the only way you can get content on these TVs is through some sort of app. Whether it be Netflix, there's no ability to plug in a tuner. There's no ability to plug in a cable box. Like, that's the only way you can get content.
So do they have HDMI ports on them?
They might.
So you could. So what
But-
I've done in the past is I've disabled Wi-Fi.
So it's
on
a
the,
monitor.
It's effectively a
basically.
monitor that has no HDMI, and I don't know because I haven't bought one, but no HDMI, no
No
VGA.
HDMI would be a deal killer, but if it has HDMI, you can disable any network connectivity on the TV itself.
Yep.
Buy a $30 Android TV and plug it in, and
But-
a lot of these $30 ones come with Kodi on it. And now
Steal
Kodi
content.
in and of itself is not a vehicle to pirate stuff. You have to configure it to do that, and get content from your $30 Android TV.
Yep.
But what I've found, and what multiple independent researchers have found, is that Android build that comes on there has, if it doesn't have malware, at least what I found on them by reverse engineering the Android builds on them, is it's got some kind of adware or spyware. And I think that that's where they're also monetizing.
Yep.
They're going, oh, I'm putting this app on here. The app is basically auto-clicking ads in the background,
Yep.
monetizing and giving kickback to
And-
whatever
and
Chinese
it-
manufacturer sold you that for $27.99 on Amazon.
And it may not even be that they're giving kickbacks to folks like Netflix. That the company that is selling this device is getting the kickbacks because it's doing auto ad clicking and so forth.
Or they're
Yeah,
monetizing
there's-
directly. They're including
or
the app.
crypto mining, crypto jacking, and by the way, Strat on the Discord has stated that he's been decrypting these or reverse engineering these for a long time now. He said, and you unlock the secret menu, discover they come with decryption emulators built in. So there's a lot of interesting things going on those Android TVs.
To Strat's point, Josh, some of the ones, the one that we pulled the eMMC chip off of,
Yes.
the file system was encrypted. As far as I can tell, the file system was encrypted with Android.
No, that was a different. You said
might have
that
been a different
before
one.
we had pulled that one.
Okay. But one of them, the file system, as far as I can tell so far, and again, I'm not the world's greatest friggin' Android reverse engineer, right? The file system's encrypted. So, Josh, to your point and Strat's point, what are they hiding? Like, why are you encrypting the file system on these devices? The only reason you would do that would be to prevent rooting, which I'll get to in a moment, or to prevent analysis to figure out what is on that device that's doing something nefarious. Now, prevent rooting is an interesting concept because Netflix, for example, will use the Android attestation API to figure out what type of Android it's running on. And if it's running on a rooted Android device, Netflix won't work. And so Netflix is brokering the deal going, if you want to include Netflix in your device, you can't allow the users to root that device because Netflix wants to protect its intellectual property and its business model. Crazy.
Well, I mean, you're going even deeper than I think a lot of these places are even looking, right? Like, one of the main concerns is to market, to consumer, lowest possible cost, which means lowest
Right.
possible goods on those chips. And those chips also come, not tested from the cheapest manufacturer and not updatable long term. There's not a huge update strategy. You're talking a 2 to 5 year lifespan planning after they hit market, which is probably 2 years after they've already done development and QA. So there may not be that much thought process into a lot of this.
Well, also, I don't know. I somewhat disagree, Todd. I think there is a strategy because one of the apps that I've reverse engineered is called ADUps FOTA. And you can Google search that and you will find a long history, dates back to 2016, where this app has been malicious.
Oh, but those are apps, so don't get me wrong.
Those are apps. The apps are
programming
updatable.
on the devices are 100% selling that ad data, selling the telemetry,
Yep.
and that's where they
And
make
they're
their money and
updating.
subsidize that product.
So you
Yes.
review the security of that app at one point and you go, oh, it's good. And then later on, it does an update And now that app is collecting all kinds of stuff on you and sending it somewhere. And this 80 ups FOTA app has been like, I literally read an article from Malwarebytes. It's like, oh, like this app was bad, and then we wrote about it, and then the app cleaned itself up, and then it was bad again, and then it cleaned itself up because the app is getting updates, and there are brokers that are like brokering this access, basically like, oh, you want to include your app on my Android TV, that's fine. I'll give you like 3-year service contract where you can update the app to do whatever you want it to, and I give you the key, and you can just update it. Like
that's what botnets do. That's how initial access brokers and botnets work in selling that to ransomware groups and loading kits as part of their secondary initial access. Like they maintain the botnet maintains access and control over that botnet. You're paying that initial access broker and the botnet owners or herders to upload your DLL or upload your ransomware and get C2 on that. That doesn't mean that their access goes away and or they lose their botnet. Like those botnets maintain access for, I mean, some of these QBot and a lot of the Quackbot stuff has been around. ICE-ID, they've been around for decades, and access has been maintained.
Right. And it's crazy. You know, I think attackers are, what I started writing up was they want access to these devices because, one, they have internet access, and two, they're always on. Like, why would you go turn off or unplug your Android TV device, right? Like it's basically
how many EDR appliances are monitoring and or have insight into IoT networks and even in corporations into IoT network segments and or the always on place that most consumers let their internet live on.
But even if you were to put, so there are some, to your point, Tyler, there are some, like I think Dr. Web is one of them, and they make basically an antivirus app for Android that will run on your Android TV, but there's no way that these apps are catching everything, because some of this malware is like embedded in the bootloader partition on the flash chip, is what the human security pointed out. I haven't fully like unpacked that or like matched what I was finding and what they're finding kind of thing, but some of it is embedded in like the boot image. So even if you clean it up, it's just reinfecting itself basically.
I hate to carry this out farther, but chatting on Discord with Strat, he's got some experience. You could do a whole show with him on this.
Oh, absolutely.
Where do we sign up?
Cryptor and other hidden menus and things he's been finding. It's like, holy.
We need to bring Strat on, because he's one of the, now adding to a list of folks that include myself, Larry, some of my coworkers, human security. I mean, there's a lot of folks looking at this, and every time I feel like folks like us look at this, we find bad things, right? Like even if I'm not finding the malware that was in their indicators of compromise, which I haven't, the core Java file was one. And there, you'll see when I publish my article, I'll link you to some GitHubs and other articles that give you some indicators of compromise. And I didn't find the core Java application that many of them point back to. I forget what they call the malware, bad something. What do they call that, Lade? Did you have the story? Did they call it bad patch, bad something? I didn't find, bad box. So I didn't find like evidence of direct evidence of bad box and PeachBit. But like I said, as soon as I fire up the device, it's doing a TCP TLS handshake with Google.cn. What? What? Why?
I've seen IoT devices recently that default DNS refaults to a DNS resolver in China.
Yeah.
And even overrides DHCP assigned resolvers.
Yeah.
Like that's not
got
bad.
one hard coded in there.
Right. Yeah, so there's definitely some shenanigans. And so I'm glad we had this discussion, because my article is going to focus on kind of where we started this whole episode, right? Is going to start to, I got said device, what did I do to get to this point?
And
like what next?
And I think your approach is interesting in that normally you see these things and it's like, oh yeah, I got this device and exploit.
Yeah.
Not, how the hell did I open it?
Right.
What did I discover?
There's a whole like hardware side of it, but also I learned a lot about the Android debugger. Like I'd messed with the Android debugger in the past, but I kind of dug into, wow, is that thing powerful? Holy crap, is that thing?
ADB is amazing.
You can dump the memory of processes through Android, but you can do all kinds of stuff.
Start adding extensions to stuff like
And
that.
that's how we did a lot of the stuff with the early phones. Like when
Yes.
it was much easier to mess with bootloaders and ROMs and even customize and build your own ROMs. Like you can get down to the hardware just from an ADB shell. Like there's a lot you can do.
There's a
from there.
lot, and you know what's interesting is where a lot of security researchers or security research is building upon the Android hacking community that has different goals in mind. Like I want to hack my Android device so I can remove the default apps, which is admirable. Like that's great. But like our goals are, I want to see if there's malware on it. But like there's a lot of crossroads in there. Like we intersected a lot of different. What is it? XDA forums. XDA forums. I spend a lot of time on XDA.
XDA's been around for a long
They've been around for a long
time.
time.
Yeah, they do.
Spend a lot of time on that.
I mean, you start going down that, and like you run into stability issues. There's a reason. Like so, I used to ROM my phone probably twice a day. There were times I would ROM and like reflash my phone down to the bootloader at least 5 times a week.
I remember those days.
That caused stability issues. Like I was writing my own ROMs, I was writing my own hardware pieces. Like none of the stuff worked how it was supposed to. Like there's a point at which you trade convenience and security for stability and ongoing support and things working and interoperable.
Usability.
Usability was a thing.
I remember those days and like right before and when you first started it in Guardians, like I didn't get the message on my phone. I can't call in because I just doing a ROM update and like
they forced me to iOS and it didn't help.
nope, because you were rebuilding that thing like once a week, like default.
Yeah, it's scary.
Your laptop wasn't much far behind that either.
It was probably worse at those days. It was probably worse.
It breeds paranoia.
Isn't it good
It
that
certainly
Tyler's
does.
matured a bit?
I was gonna say he's gotten less paranoid. No, he's probably the equal amount of paranoid, but he just needs to get shit done now, I think.
Yeah, now you got to get shit done, and or there's this the cynical side is kicked in of like, you know, what can we?
What are you running?
do?
What are you running for a phone now, Tyler? Are you Pixel or no?
Oh yeah, I'm Pixel. I'm Pixel through and through. Just
Are you going to the
run the
8?
iOS
I haven't gone to the 8 yet. I don't have a plan to the 8 because my 7 is so great. I'm like, why do I need the 8? Like Google has reached Apple level where I'm like,
Finally,
do I need? Well, you could say the
I
other.
want to fold.
Have you got fingerprints on that 7? If so, you need to upgrade.
No, I don't. Do I? Yeah, no, I do. It's an on-screen fingerprint. It used to be on the back of
There
the
you
phone.
go. No, I'm just saying, if it's got a smudge or dirty, it's time to upgrade it. Come on.
Well, they got the Fold now. The Fold looks like the Fold is like what, $1,500 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
nervous.
and I-
about
and
those
we're hitting
folding
iPhone
screens.
levels
They-
of like
you fold them a bunch. Apparently, they have issues, but
Yep.
they are really cool.
They look
I've
really
seen the
cool.
same. Like somebody that I forget who it was that said they have a Fold and they've had it about 9 months and they're sending it back to get the screen replaced because.
Oh no! Google has a foldable Pixel now.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Oh, and
Oh, I know.
they've had a pre-released version of it.
And they've sent it back
I
already.
gotcha, okay.
Yep. It's been.
damn.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why would I not want multiple monitors on my phone?
I know, right? That's what I was thinking when I was looking at it, but I'm like, I don't know. My 7 works just. I hate that I'm.
My 7 works so well that I'm not content that it works.
I hate that I'm.
you're
I hate that
turning
I'm
into
old
your
enough now.
grandparents.
But I hate that I'm
Come on.
old enough now where I've made the determination that my 7 is good enough and I don't need to upgrade.
Good enough. I don't need the latest. Why am I?
Oh,
Why am
God.
I like this now?
That means I'm old now.
Yep.
Good Lord.
That's the breaking point.
What else did we say that we would talk about in this segment before we round out? Because we got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah. 5-10 minutes here and there.
No, we got 10 because we didn't start.
we had
till 10
to wait
past.
for the automation.
We had to wait for the automation, and we started 10
Call it
past.
10.
So,
What was that? What was that,
no.
Lee? What was that, Lee?
I said call it 10 minutes.
Okay. Sorry. I thought you were saying a story there.
So
No.
rapid resets in HTTP 2 lead to the world's largest DDoS attack. And I don't know, as much as I can get excited about DDoS attacks, the recent attacks surpassed 10 million RPS with 71 million RPS. What is RPS in this measurement?
Request per second.
Request per second.
I
Thank
guess.
you. Yeah, that's a good guess. That's a huge jump. And it's my story number 12. I think, Lee, you had this story as well. And all the technical details are there for those that really want to dig into DDoS attacks. But I find it not as interesting as other things. But I do find it interesting that we've broken the record. I think that's significant.
I mean,
So
DDoS has been around so long. DDoS was one of the things that pushed a lot of the ransomware and the actors and the botnet creations and the ability to, multi-thread and have the herds of the botnets and multiplayer, multi-channel kind of thing. So while I don't like denial of service or distributed denial of service, like it is what pushed a lot of this industry to build better firewalls, to build layer 7 detection applications, smart responses to those, and built CDNs and some very core fundamental backbones to the internet. So while I still I glance over denial of service stuff, when there are times that need to be leveraged, denial of service has its place in the attack portfolio that cannot be denied. You look at wartime, you look at things like multi-factor, you look at race conditions, or you look at things like BGP and the broadcasts that happened and the timing that is so critical to a lot of those particularities of the internet and the backbone the internet runs on. That's when these attacks really become much more prevalent to why it is important to pay attention to these. Again, I do this myself and just it's a denial of service attack. Okay, no big deal. But you add that into an ongoing multi-stage, multi-phased nation-state attack or ransomware group or BGP hijack, then it becomes a very big deal, and we have to take those things very seriously.
I liked what was more interesting to me was the D-Link Wi-Fi range extender attack. Like, I get what you're saying about DDoS, but I like things that let me pwn shit. And my story number 10 allows you to pwn shit and pwn shit with your Flipper Zero, because I'm like, oh, this is okay, so I need a Wi-Fi dev board or some kind of ESP32 attached to my Flipper Zero. But if you have that, this D-Link Wi-Fi range extender goes into this pairing mode, Larry. I don't know if you read my story. This is right up your alley.
I did not. I saw it, but I didn't get a chance to read it.
I'll break it down for you. There's like a pairing mode where the D-Link Wi-Fi range extender reads in the SSID, and in doing that, introduces a command injection vulnerability such that if I use the create AP command and I create a Wi-Fi SSID with a string like test and then a single quote and then 2 ampersands and then a Linux command of my choosing and then 2 ampersands, the D-Link Wi-Fi range extender reads that SSID and executes my command.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I could actually, in Wi-Fi Marauder, I can create SSIDs to
based on a name you specify.
Yeah, based on the name I specify. I could basically just type that in, and I could execute a command on these from my Flipper Zero.
Netcat to a specific IP address that's on the internet listening on
Linux command of your choosing. Yes. My story number 10 is a great read. This is from Red Team Pen Testing. I thought, cool. I thought it was great. Yeah. I'd like to throw the Flipper Zero in there because I think I've seen some claims about what the Flipper Zero can do, and some of them I dispute. I'm like, you're not unless you're really good and just masking the fact of how good you are. I'm like, you're really not doing that with a Flipper Zero, even with a Wi-Fi dev board which has an ESP32 on it, right? Yep. With Marauder, like Marauder is not the most.
It's not quote God's gift. Yeah.
It's not the most feature-rich platform. Larry and I have both tested it, right? Yep. Tyler, I'm sure you have too, right? Like it's not the most feature-rich platform for Wi-Fi attacks, but this particular attack is so ridiculously
easy,
freaking easy that you could totally do it from your Flipper, which is great.
Totally.
All right, so we covered that, but also Larry had a story, and I was like, "What? Why is the story that you added, dude?"
My number 8,
beginner in cybersecurity.
You can tell from the title.
It says so. The title is "Beginner in Cybersecurity?" Learn all caps this hacking tools first. So it says this, like this. Hacking tools, plural, first. Yep. And then I tried to read the article and it was, technically it was English.
GPT messed up the language barrier. Well, no,
they should have used ChatGPT for this article, Tyler.
The author's name, I would very much indicate is not a native English speaker.
Correct.
So that said, I think they did a really good job on that title, given that they may not be a native English speaker.
I mean, if I tried to do this in like Hindi or one of the other languages that I don't speak natively, like
You would,
yeah,
I would not do
probably,
good.
like,
Yep.
but
basically,
we all just damn clicked on this medium and they got upranked, and like this is not a great article, but
Nope.
concise and definitely cover the tools that you should do if you're a beginner, I guess.
Sure. I mean, they're
Absolute
basically
beginner.
like, hey, run Nmap, Metasploit, and Burp Suite, and Hydra, and Netcap.
Now you're pen test. Now you pen test.
Now you pen test. Now you pen test now.
Yep. Yep. Also, remember that always learn the working behind this tools, because you don't want to become a script kiddie. Let's put it. I wanted to call this out for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, I wanted to hear your take on this story, Larry.
One, I thought this article was completely ridiculous, and I thought it might have actually been written by ChatGPT, who is someone who's not a native English speaker, and then edited.
Right.
The second one is that I'm going to go read more stuff from Rajkaran. Do you know why? One of the things that I've always ever told someone that has come to me for advice about how to break into security, I said, go do something and publish about it. It may not be new or novel, but you may have a different take about something that someone has blogged about 1,000 times.
Also, I advise folks to find a mentor, and I think any one of us on this show right now is more than happy to mentor someone in multiple capacities. We have a whole Discord channel, channel on our Discord server dedicated to that, where you can go ask us collectively. And I've done at least one or two calls, based on that, where they're like,
Same.
Hey, Paul, I need advice. I'm like, dude, here's my Calendly link. Let's schedule some time and mentor. And if you're like, hey, Paul, Larry, Tyler, Jeff, Lee, I'm thinking about writing this article. Can you just review it first? More than happy to review it for you.
Yep, absolutely. Right? So,
content editing.
Well,
yeah,
I originally wanted to poo-poo this article.
No, I know where you're going. Yeah, I don't want to poo-poo it too hard. I agree. Yeah,
and but I totally. This would be same things that I would argue that someone who wants to start breaking the field and start getting recognized to post this type of stuff. Hey, I learned this thing today, and it was new to me.
Sure.
Blog about it, because it proves that you can start to write. I mean, arguably, there's some stuff in here, but demonstrates a really good command of the English language, despite some of the mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, this can be educated.
But also, I think we can guide folks on. I'm not going to discourage you to write about Nmap, but damn it, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I've seen some alternatives to some different port scanners.
What is it? Well, ZenMap, Masscan.
It's not Masscan. No, it wasn't. It was a newer one that was an alternative to Nmap. And if it was someone I was mentoring, I'd be like, go find that.
Yep.
And send me the link and learn a little bit about it, and then let's do another call, and then let's talk about that, and then let's put together an article that's like
standby. I'll tell you.
Nmap. Here's some other scanners that you should consider, because
Naboo.
Maybe it was Naboo. Yeah, it could have been. Yep. There's other ones out there that I've seen.
Yeah, Naboo. Let me bring up this thread here.
And
Naboo.
There was another one that.
Some other Project Discovery IO tools from Mr. Wright.
Formerly Run Zero.
ZMap, Masscan. Run Zero.
Project Discovery has some good stuff. Nuclei, right? I'd be like, rather than talk about Metasploit, maybe talk about Nuclei, because it's a newer tool. There's a ton of stuff written about Metasploit. Talk about Nuclei maybe instead. And yes, they're different, but Nuclei needs a little more love, in my opinion, than does Metasploit right now. And then maybe talk about Metasploit, let's talk about some common C2 frameworks. And I go back through my vast amount of bookmarks, and I could pull out some C2 frameworks. Here's some C2. We're here to mentor people. So hit us up for that.
So while it started out as this article is a piece of shit. No, this article is really good.
it's an opportunity to mentor and learn.
And honestly, they're making some strides to try to show that they have some demonstrable knowledge, maybe it limited, but it's a start. And
No,
I
agreed.
think that is amazing. Billy, you just had a comment, maybe?
Oh, I was going to say, I was thinking this would be a chance. You could do a comment on this article and give him some suggestions for tools to look at.
Yeah.
And to round out everything we talked about at the top of the segment that we're going to talk about, I have one of those said tools, Lee, to your point.
That would be?
My tool of the week is called Ventoy. Have you guys built a Ventoy USB bootable
you were talking
drive?
about this. Yeah,
I put this out on my social media. Sure. We could build one of these on our own, right? Like if you're good with bootloaders and creating menus and things like that, you could build your own. And I encourage you to go build your own. I think that's a great academic exercise.
You learn a whole shit ton about
right?
bootloaders.
It's on my list of things to do. I want to go build my own. However, if I needed, which I do, a tool where I can have a USB thumb drive that gives me a menu that, so when you create Ventoy, they give you a tool and you create the file system and the partitions on the thumb drive. One's a bootable partition and one is just space.
Yep.
I think it's a exFAT or whatever partition, right?
And you load a bunch of ISOs to it.
You drag and drop ISO. So I drag and drop Windows, Arch Linux, Kali, Ubuntu, Manjaro. Dropped them all on there, right? Yep. And when you boot this thumb drive, it gives you the list. Which one
ISO do you want to boot?
Which one do you want to boot? I'm like, I need to build a Windows server. Like in the past, I'm like, shit, I had a thumb drive where I wrote Windows 10 on the thing, right?
Dude, I've been cleaning out some of my office.
Yeah.
And
you collect a lot of thumb drives.
Dude, I think I have Hiram's boot CD on a thumb drive.
Hiram's boot CD is still really good. I think I dragged and dropped the latest version of that on there too.
I think, but mine is from version 1 dot something. And we, at one point early on in the career, we were given some exclusive access just for us, access to some FBI or police build for booting workstations.
Who was it? DigiNinja was talking about UNet booting. He's like, what was the one back in the day where I had? I'm like, UNet boot. And he's like, yeah, that was the one.
I still have those,
right?
4 gig flash drives or 1 gig flash drives with UNet booting on it. I'm
right. So, but
I got to take these to the fire. More importantly, I need to send these to the firing range with Shelly, so she can swat flies off of them.
But here's what you need to do: you go to Amazon, and I think I bought the little Samsung. They're like tiny little dongles. They're 256 gig, and they're like,
Jesus,
dude, they're like $15. I mean, it's Amazon's having their Prime Day or whatever, right? So you can get a USB thumb drive. What did it? Let's see. Hold on. I'm going to tell you exactly.
While you're digging that up, I'll give you a fun story. Over the weekend, Saturday morning, we get up and nobody can connect to the internet in our house. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Are the wireless APs down? No, we can connect. And is for the first time in 7 or 8 years our Verizon Fios down? And nope, the set-top boxes can connect. Turns out it was my pfSense firewall.
Yep.
Hardware died just for no reason.
That happens.
The hardware died.
Happens here in the studio a lot.
And I'm like, all right, I have a spare and got to figure out what happened and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, shit, I don't have a backup of any of my config.
Now you make me want to back up on my pfSense.
Dude, seriously, do it.
I do. I have a backup somewhere.
Because I had this spare firewall that I used in Guardians to build a separate network, and then that went away, and we did other things. So I have this backup firewall that I paid for. Identical hardware. And it was as simple as taking this 4 gig SanDisk USB thumb drive out of the backup machine and plugging it into the same port in the other one, and then powering it on, and it all worked. I'm like, well, this other one's trash, so I'm going to take the memory out of it and put it in the other one.
Yeah, there you go.
And so now I got to find a new firewall.
Ventoy, right? You do the builder thing.
Yep.
You get a boot partition. You get a storage partition where you keep all your ISOs. On Amazon right now, you can buy a Samsung USB 3.1 flash drive, 256 gigs for $19.99. Spend your $20.
Damn.
Build your Ventoy thing. Then go to Kali and a million other different places. Drag all your ISOs on this, and these are the little little tiny ones. Right?
Oh yeah,
they're. I have to put a lanyard on it so I don't lose it.
Like it's barely, it sticks out of the USB port, like the little keyboard adapters.
So now when I'm doing sysadmin stuff here or working on stuff at home, I'm like, I need to install this, that, or the other thing. Now I've also got one USB thumb drive that I can keep up to date. To your point, Larry, I've got a really old high-end boot CD thumb drive, 8 gig one somewhere. No, I wipe out delete the ISO that's there. I replace it with the new one, and I can always boot the latest stuff, provided I keep this one drive up to date. I carry one thing with me. I stick it in my organizer or my bag or whatever, and I carry it with me wherever I go. So when I'm here in the studio and need to do sysadmin work, and they're like, you need to build a Linux, a Raspberry Pi, or a Windows system, I'm like, I got it. I don't need to go build something. I just boot up this one thing, select the thing, and I'm off to the races.
I got to tell you, after doing some weeding out of my office to rearrange some space for some stuff, and finding hundreds of USB thumb drives collected over the years, literally hundreds. I probably have 200 USB thumb drives. Like every time Sans would teach 617, and there'd be like 10 USB thumb drives of 16 gigs. I'm like, these are good, and
save those.
They didn't take them back, and they had no idea it's cost more to ship them back than for them to disappear. So I take them. I've literally got 200 or 300 USB drives of all sorts of flavors and varieties. And then I've got spinning external disks of between 500 meg and 4 terabytes.
Oh,
and then external SSDs.
Yeah, but you can build those. So one of the things, Larry,
and now I feel like Tyler, and like I only have so many square feet, and Tyler's got 10x the number of square feet and probably 10x the number of drives. And now I understand how you lose Bitcoin and that type of shit.
I almost bought, so it's 19.
Tyler,
so Larry, to your point, is $19.99 is an external USB 3.2 enclosure for an M.2. And I've got a spare M.2, so I'm thinking I could take that spare M.2, put it in this enclosure, put Ventoy on it, and then
everything.
I've got everything, all the things on it. So
because your Mac OS discs on it while you're at it.
Nothing new, but this is a cool thing that you should have in your toolkit, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just flashing way back to when you used to carry a bazillion CDs in your jump bag, so you had what you needed to boot everything.
Yep, with the Windows license key written on the CD.
Yep, found a Windows 7 one with the license written on it the other day.
I did. I have somewhere. I probably still have an old binder, Lee, to your point, with CDs in it that have like Red Hat and Debian written on it, because that's what I was booting on.
And if all else failed on that Windows box, you booted one of those Linux distributions to get at the drive and fix it.
Yep. Well, and that's also here in Boot City. A lot of times I need to repair, because I still sysadmin and help the people out in the studio here. I'm like, I need this stuff, and so I thought it was pretty cool. And again, you can build this yourself, and I think that's again, it's on my list of projects. Cool. Yeah, like Ventoy is a crutch right now, where it makes it easy for me to do it.
It's not a great name.
No, it's terrible.
It sounds
name.
like an off-brand Chinese.
It does.
A marital aid.
They also support.
Aid,
They also support secure boot, but via a mock list. So you have to machine or key load their key, and you can do a secure boot. They did add that. But you could also build this yourself. I mean, my coworkers have built, similar kind of things, and you should build it yourself. You put that on your project list.
Yep.
But again, if you're like, I need this now, you can just go. Ventoy worked great for me. Tyler, did you have? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, how do we know this isn't Chinese based on their ISOs that have Chinese in front of their windows from cn.windows? And how do we know they're not slipstreaming something into the ISO? We're back to the compiler and the compiler.
Yeah, I haven't reverse engineered it. I agree. If you're paranoid, Tyler, you build your own, right? Like, you build your own.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I know, right? Like,
wait, what? Tyler.
I mean, you can build your own.
Tyler, the guy that you ROM'd his phone 2 times a day.
You can totally do it.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I couldn't tell you off the top. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how to do it, right? But like Linux has shim and grub, and it's in the secure boot hierarchy, and you could totally build this yourself. I mean, if you're good, you want to work with bootloaders, by all means, build it yourself. Like, that's amazing. But to
Ain't
save
nobody got
yourself
time for that.
Ain't nobody
Right,
got time
Tyler?
for that. I'm like,
Nobody got time for that, so I'm probably just gonna keep wiping my disks by hand and keep uploading one ISO at a time.
So again, the article that I linked to close this out for Ventoy is their announcement for their new version when they've made improvements
And more backdoors.
and probably more backdoors. But definitely go check it out. If you find backdoors, please disclose them. If you're going to reverse engineer and look into that, that's awesome. Please do that. But it's in what was story? I don't know what story number. It's in my stories in the show notes for this episode.
13.
My story number 13. Go check it out. 1.0.96 is the latest version. So something that Ventoy was on my list and building my own was on my list. I got to Ventoy faster. So thank you everyone for listening and watching this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and let's get the heck out of here out.